You guys look like... What do they look like, Jimmy?
Dorks. They look like a couple of dorks.
Get those birds! Birds!
They're coming to get you, Barbara.
What? Are you kidding? We got some family here. Can you dig it? Can you dig it? Can you dig it?
You are listening to the In the Mouth of Dorkness podcast. Here are Brad, Lisa, Brian, and Darren.
Welcome to another edition of the It Modcast podcast. With me is Brian Young.
God, I love being a turtle!
The Turtle Dork.
Every civilization was built on the back of a disposable workforce, but I can only make so many.
And also joining us is Lisa Gullickson.
Quick, suck it before the venom reaches my heart.
Wife Dork.
Making babies is easy. Taking care of them is the punishment.
And Brad Gullickson.
And for gosh sake, watch your language.
That's not going away anytime soon.
Mouth Dork.
It's too bad she won't live. But then again, who does?
And I'm your host, Darren Smith.
Warm. Warmer. Disco.
The Disco Dork. I'll take that as a yes. And welcome to the It Modcast podcast.
Yay!
That was from the first Blade Runner.
It was.
Aha! I got that reference.
Gaff.
When they got it about a month ago.
That's right.
Is that true? Did you see it in the theater?
No, the first one?
Yeah.
No, I have it on Blu-ray, the final
nice.
cut. Yeah. So I watched that like a few weeks back.
Yeah, because I just rewatched it at the Alamo
Oh,
Loudon on the big screen, and it was awesome in Theater A, and it was absolutely awesome, but I was also in the front row, so it was also very close.
What cut you watch, Brian?
Final.
Nice.
Final cut. No voiceover, none of that stuff.
No spoilers for 2049, but is he a replicant?
Oh, Deckard? Mm-hmm. Is that a spoiler? Is that a bait question? No,
It's
I don't
still
think,
up for debate.
Yeah, I don't think he is.
He is 100% definitely a replicant.
This is fact.
Yes.
You know this.
Yes, I've seen the final cut. Have you?
Once.
I think Deckard is a replicant.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, because I had that question in my mind watching the film, and when they explain like what the replicants are, and then you look at Deckard, it just doesn't seem like with the strength, the super strength that the replicants have when he was fighting. What's the guy? The guy that was in
Punk Rock Hair?
Tango and Cash. Yeah.
Oh, Brian James.
Yeah. Like he was getting his ass whipped.
Well, I mean, replicants have varying levels of strength.
But see, they never talked about that in the first film. As far as
they
like,
don't. They do allude to maybe another model.
To watch it again. It's a dense film, man. I have to watch it again.
How do you interpret the unicorn then? How come Gaff?
Wait, but the unicorn is not.
Is the unicorn not in the final cut?
Well, wait. You mean
Yeah,
at the end?
Yeah.
Oh, with the origami? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So how does Gaff know about the unicorn?
I don't know, man. I gotta rewatch it. You're throwing too much at me. Man. But I liked it. I have to rewatch it. Definitely.
All right. So your weekend dork. You just came off of Lost Weekend 8, right?
Yeah, Lost Weekend 8. So came back, recovered. At least I think I'm recovered from that. And go right into some of the new films that just came out. So kind of dovetailing into what me and Brad were just kind of debating. 2049, Blade Runner 2049 came out this past week.
Yeah.
Past weekend. And it was
amazing.
It was a pretty amazing film. It does kind of fall in line with me with the first film. I think it is kind of a dense film. It's a film that's deliberately paced, but I think it's a film that also has a compelling story at the heart of it, especially dealing with Ryan Gosling. Now, I won't give any type of spoilers away because this film just came out, and just like with the first film, I think that a lot of people kind of going to rediscover or discover this film in years to come on DVD and Blu-ray. So I don't want to give any type of spoilers.
It does not appear that they're going to the box office.
Exactly, they're not going to the theaters to see this film, which is kind of devastating because it's a film that should be seen.
But on point with the release of the original Blade Runner also.
Absolutely. So I think this will probably end up being a cult film as well. But I mean, just talking about some of the aesthetics of the film, I thought everything just looked beautiful. I mean, we could start. Of course, we're going to talk about Roger Deakins and his cinematography, but I just thought the story was. It's hard not to really delve into spoilers.
We can talk about the basic premise. We can set the film up.
Yeah.
Ryan Gosling. He's a Blade Runner.
Yes, he's a Blade. Okay, there we go.
We know that he is a replicant from the start.
We didn't know that.
Yeah, we do.
They
established that in the beginning, but we don't know that going into the film.
Well, I mean, it's established within the first 5 minutes of the movie.
Okay.
I think we can spoil the first 30 minutes of the movie.
I didn't know if that was.
It's also in any reviews you read or anything. It's out there.
Okay.
Brian fears the backlash.
I know a little bit.
I remember my green room review. Aaron Prescott still traumatized for being called out for being a spoiler.
Here's the thing.
Mentioned something that was in the trailer.
If you want to go completely blind into Blade Runner, you should have seen it on Thursday night like we did.
Yeah, there you go.
We've had the entire weekend to see it. I'm sorry, we're going to spoil some things. Are we going to spoil the ending?
No.
Is there another unicorn involved?
Yes.
Maybe.
Shush.
Okay, so fuck it. Ryan Gosling's K is a replicant. There.
And a Blade Runner.
Okay. The weight's off my shoulder.
Is that what you were worried about spoiling, Brian?
It's in the beginning, and we don't know that because when I went into the film, I was like, that first scene with Dave Bautista, I was like, oh shit. It's like, K's a replicant. Where is this going? So it is kind of, and people say that the story is a spoiler in and of itself. Like just the story of the film is a. So
can I synopsis it real quick? Synopsis. The first scene is K landing to take out a replicant. He's there to retire a replicant. Yeah. That replicant is Dave Bautista. One of the old models.
From the first film.
In 2049, the old models are pretty much extinct. This new brand that is being created by Jared Leto's corporation has replaced the Tyrell models, and the slave workforce is in full swing.
Mm-hmm.
And the idea is that this next set of replicants is more obedient, is the idea. They have obedience built into them, more or less.
And so, opening scene, he's retiring a replicant. He has an exchange. A fight occurs. It's actually a really awesome, quick fight. And after that fight,
a mystery is uncovered.
The mystery that's uncovered is that there's a suitcase buried under a tree. Mm-hmm. And we won't talk about what the contents of that suitcase are.
Because they're mysterious.
Or what have you. Yes. But that's the inciting event. Mm-hmm. And that takes Kay
he goes all detective
adventure. Mm-hmm. And we know it's going to, at some point, meet up with Deckard because we've seen the movie trailer.
Yes.
And we've seen the movie poster.
Yes.
Okay. There you are.
Okay. So that's the synopsis that we have for for Blade Runner. And I gotta say, I really, really enjoyed this film. I mean, it kept me engaged throughout. It's weird because I think a lot of people outside of the film community are going to probably have a difficult time kind of responding to this film. I think because of the length of the movie, because of the pacing of it. But I love the pacing. I love what Villeneuve brings to this film because he has such a very kind of realistic take to a lot of his previous films, where you look at something like Prisoners or Arrival or even Sicario, and he brings that type of aesthetic into the science fiction realm, which I think lends to this type of material.
What's so interesting to me is that Ridley Scott's original film is trying to do the film noir sci-fi thriller, and succeeds on every level, right? And as we heard at Comic-Con this year, Denis Villeneuve only took the job, he said, because he didn't want to see anybody else fuck it up.
Absolutely.
And what he does with 2049 is easily establish that this is the Blade Runner universe that we know and love.
Yeah.
And yet doesn't necessarily mimic the noir style that Scott had in his film, and progresses it technologically 40 years into the future.
And that's what I like, because it's not beholden to that first film, even though we know it's set in that same world as the original Blade Runner. But then you take it 35 years from when that film was released, and it feels like Villeneuve has the freedom to really tell his own story. And that's what I saw in this film, that he's able to tell his own individual story, but set in
what
this
he
world.
does, though, is he still takes a very simple plot, a very simple, hard-boiled mystery, and then blows it up into a 3-hour film. This should be an 80-minute movie, but it is all mushroom clouded out. I mean, it's.
But that's not a fault to it.
No,
either.
it's
I
quite
like
the opposite.
Absolutely.
I love the pacing of this film.
Yeah.
I love how it takes its time. And I love how Villeneuve has his partner in Roger Deakins and says, "You're the star of this movie."
Mm-hmm.
And what Roger Deakins shoots is not the Ridley Scott Blade Runner. It's the Roger Deakins, Denis Villeneuve Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And it doesn't feel like blasphemy.
Because I think what makes it so evocative of the first film, even with all of these changes and all of these updates, is the pacing. Because the original film has so much silence in it, has so much space. You spend so much time just watching Deckard just contemplate a piece of evidence. And you get that again with Kay in this new film, just watching him think for so much of the film. And then also the color palette, that rich orange that goes throughout the film, or the deep blues in other scenes, is very evocative of the first film. I think that it's like you can tell it's, even though it's evolved so much, you can tell that it came from like the same initial DNA.
Well, and it picks up the ending of the unicorn. What is it to be human? What is it to be replicant?
And I like how they ask that question.
And explores it further.
Yes.
And this is much more about that idea than the original film ever was.
Yeah, it's almost like the original film asked that question, and this movie spends the time really trying to answer or explore it a lot deeper. And that's kind of what I appreciate. Coming off watching that first film and going into this film, not really getting into the story, but it really does ask that question, what does it mean to be human and to be a replicant?
And the fact that it's Kay asking that question, and you find Kay falling into the habits of what's real, what's not real, and having other characters and entities within the film clarify that to him is really fascinating.
And the question is so important to him. And when he meets Deckard, the question is not at all important to Deckard.
No,
he has the answer
He's
already.
Resolved it. He's resolved it in his mind.
It's such a phenomenal introduction, and we're not going to spoil that. But when they finally get together and they get to have that conversation, it's like some of the happiest moments I've had in the theater.
It is a split second and definitive, which is so beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just I really, really enjoyed this film. I mean, going back to some of the filmmaking that Villeneuve is doing here, one thing that I really, really appreciate is or like about the film is how you take a lot of these different elements, and I think it's probably some of the best that we've seen, whether you look at something like editing or sound design or the visual effects, the score, and the cinematography, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more. I mean, it's all top notch, and I think it actually kind of elevates just everything in those respective forms to something that we haven't really seen before in a very nuanced and subtle way. I mean, the sound design I thought was just incredible in this film, and of course the visual effects. Some of the visual effects that we see towards the end of the film, it's just, I thought, mind blowing. And then of course the cinematography and how Deakins is able, even with a lot of those, we see it in the trailer, like those giant projections that we see, like those aren't visual effects. Like they actually projected those images and they were shot through the camera.
Well, and we saw that at Comic-Con when they replicated those holograms in Hall H.
Yeah. So I thought that was just amazing. Some of the work that Deakins was doing on a technical level, just I don't know, just the accuracy of how he uses lighting and everything. I thought was just phenomenal.
Going back to the sound design thing you mentioned, there were places where like the score and the ambient sound were indistinguishable from each other. And I remember there was one scene where we were in the like urban area when we're in the city, and there was like this repetitive, buzzy, almost like alarm sound, and I was sitting there going like, what is that noise? I could not tell if it was music or if it was part of the world, and it was kind of unnerving almost, but intriguing.
Yeah, and it never feels like you're on a back lot or in front of a green screen. Everything looks lived in. Everything feels like an actual set. Everything it never, so there's never that disconnect with the audience when you're watching this film, and that's an achievement, I think, especially this being a science fiction film. It's just an achievement in what they were just able to do and just making everything. And I think that goes to Villeneuve, going back to that neorealism that I was talking about that he does in all of his movies. I just thought it was just phenomenal achievement in all aspects of this film and what they were able to accomplish.
Dan, we haven't heard from you. What was your big takeaway from the movie?
So as someone who isn't in love with the original Blade Runner, and I've said this on the podcast before whenever we talked about the upcoming release of 2049, how I'm going for Roger Deakins. I just want to see Roger Deakins, and then it doesn't hurt that Denis Villeneuve is directing it. So Deakins was my main draw, and so I was thinking, okay, if Villeneuve if what he said at Comic-Con was true, then I may have similar feelings toward this film as I do the original film, but at least it'll look amazing. So I'll at least have that. So the whole, what does it mean to be human, especially when robots or androids or any artificial life are pondering these questions. Like in science fiction, for me, I mean, that question gets used a lot in film. It gets explored a lot in film. So much so that for me personally, it's a tired conversation for me. So surprisingly, when Blade Runner 2049 revisits this question, I didn't have an issue with it, because the way that question is phrased was in a way that I had never had it posed to me in that way. The way it explores that ideal was unique to me. And
you have many different points of view on that question.
Yes,
through the characters in this story.
Speaking of the other characters in the story, one of my favorite characters in the story is Joy.
Yeah,
and I have never seen Joy is an artificial intelligence, but the way that she's used in the screenplay and ultimately in the film was truly remarkable for me, in that it never got to the point where I was like, it had fooled me, and I totally forgot she was AI. I totally forgot she wasn't real. That was always I was always cognitive of that, but I felt for her in the same way that I would feel for a flesh and blood character, and that elevated my feelings towards her, because I was aware that she's an artificial intelligence, and I was surprised and impressed by how the story uses that to give Kay a character to relate to, as if any other science fiction would have given him a real person, as far as a love interest, and just how he reacts and responds to her, and what. It basically takes what we look at now as far as like the discussion about artificial intelligence, Siri in our phone, and in the movie Her, right, where you have relationships with artificial intelligence. It takes that, and I think it puts it. It goes one step further than Her, in that you have a visual manifestation of this personification of this and personality.
You find yourself really pitying her.
Yeah.
Because her limitations are not her fault, and she's aware of them, and she is programmed to be in love with someone, and he does not trust it.
And it's an AI having a conversation with an AI.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
And It's a story that is being told the same year that Ridley Scott attempts to tell that exact same story in Alien Covenant and Prometheus and what he's trying to do with David and Walter in those movies.
But in this one, for whatever reason, I responded to it so much more. I mean, just the simple act of, having to take her from his
from the apartment
and then putting her in that thing,
the emitter,
just added so much drama and suspense for me because she became so. Her existence became so fragile at that point, and but at that point, because I was so invested in that character, it was just that was a really astonishing narrative achievement for me, I think, in having that. It's almost like for me, it's akin to how earlier this year we had that amazing performance from Andy Serkis as Caesar, and that's not it's a CGI creation, but like I get lost in the performance and the writing and the character of that CGI creation. It was the same way in that, this is a literal, in the movie, it's a CGI character, but I'm still feeling for this character as if she were flesh and blood in the way that Kay feels for her as if she were flesh and blood.
As if he were flesh and blood.
Yeah, right. And that's a testament to the film, because watching the movie and seeing where that relationship goes, it really affects you.
I like how it starts from a cheap place too. Like her introduction is very cheap, and she is clearly like a sex toy.
Well, and it's a narrative gag also,
right?
Because her introduction is used narratively to show how lonely Ryan
Gosling's
Kay is,
and this idea of the 50s wife / geisha / whatever.
So that. Without giving too much away, but in the advertisements, and you see that amazing projection of the Pink Lady. When we finally get to see that film, that moment in context, it's one of the most beautiful and crushing scenes in the entire movie.
Yeah. It's awesome, man.
So, and then the other characters, Robin Wright, who I've fallen in love with her all over again in Wonder Woman this year. She was great in the film. So let's talk about Jared Leto's character, who I'm assuming is going to be the point of contention for a lot of people, because his character, and I was explaining to someone, a coworker asked me, so did you see the movie? And I go, yeah. Well, how was Jared Leto? And I would say this, to temper expectations, surprisingly, he's not... Like the film, I don't know. This doesn't even have anything to do with him specifically, but the film, the choice of the screenplay and the narrative doesn't have like a main bad guy.
There's no Rutger Hauer in this film.
There's no Rutger Hauer. There's no main final boss or bad guy that has to be confronted at the end of the film. The confrontation is more of ideals and perspective and self-reflection and realizations and identities and things like that. There's no in-game bad guy. So,
I mean, there kind of is in Sylvia Hoek's Love. I mean, she's the closest, but really, Villeneuve's Blade Runner is less interested in the outside threat than the original film was. This is a movie that is focused on what does it mean to be human, what does it mean to be replicant, and if you're not fully invested in that question or the answer to that question, or the relationships between Kay and Joy and Deckard and whoever else might be involved, then the film won't work for you.
Yeah.
And if you're looking for an action film, this won't work.
This is not that.
I think that Wallace there's a parallel to Wallace when we meet Tyrell, like very removed, has this kind of twisted ideology behind what he does.
Has a narrative point.
Yeah.
But I think when you watch movie trailers and you see like Jared Leto's in this and he looks so badass, you might have an anticipation of what that character might be, and it's not that.
Yeah. I want to Brian, you mentioned about the sets and the set design and stuff like that. I was reading an article about examining if Blade Runner 2049 can be classified as a bomb, or if the success of the film will be long term, like the original Blade Runner. And one of the points was the cost of the film. And the cost of the film, which is on the screen in these sets that you're talking about. I mean, a lot of the times they could have used CGI, but they actually did stuff practically. So much so that there's this shot in the scene. I mean, in the film where when Kay sends his drone out through this city because he's looking for. This is before he meets Deckard in the orange, like the sandy place. And the drone is providing like video footage of the city, Las Vegas. It's Las Vegas, right? That's miniature. Like all that was actual miniature. Like I haven't seen miniature work on that scale like in forever. But
it's
I mean,
art.
It really is. It really is. And I was
craftsmanship.
I was just astonished that a big budget film, a huge budgeted film in 2017. Any other film would have done that landscape in CGI, and it probably would have looked amazing. But this film chose to do that the old school way and pay homage to movie magic of the past, and I really appreciated that.
But I always wonder, and there's a question I've always had about miniatures versus visual effects. I would think that miniatures would cost less than having to create, all that detail in a computer. That would and have to render all that stuff out and the man hours and manpower to have to create a complete world like that would probably cost the studio and the production more than actually having people build a miniature. So
I think
don't
from
know.
a time point of view, probably not.
Yeah.
And also, we've gotten companies have gotten
so probably
what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, that second nature in their model, in their digital model building.
I miss those days, though.
I mean,
like
I'm not an expert by any means,
Yeah.
So I really couldn't answer that question, Brian.
Yeah.
Other than to say that this looks like a tactile thing. This looks like a world that is relatable, even set within the future, and it does look like it's an extension of what we saw in the original film. And when you're talking about words like, "Is it a bomb?" It is a bummer to me that more people aren't showing up to watch this nearly 3-hour sci-fi film noir existential epic. But it's a miracle that it was produced at all. So I'll take it. And 20 years from now, I do believe that people will be watching Blade Runner 2049 the way that we watch Blade Runner 1982.
Yeah,
I don't even think the box office weekend will be a big part of the conversation in the future. I mean, this film was, I think, built. I'm almost positive that the studio were well aware that opening weekend, this film isn't going to do like Marvel, Transformers box office numbers, because you got to think it is almost 3 hours long. That does mean less showings in the theater.
Yeah, it's rated R.
It's rated R. It's based on a property that the original film, like you said earlier, Brad, was not successful at the box office. It has eventually had a cult following. So a cult following isn't enough to do big numbers on a box office weekend, especially in a weekend when you got stuff like It that's been doing well at the box office. The Lego Movie just came out.
The playoffs.
So there's so many things stacked against it on a business front. And I'm pretty sure that if the studio were willing to invest that much money into that film and get Villeneuve and get Deakins and still tell this story, then I'm pretty sure they were looking at it like an investment. Because I think the audience that this film will appeal to may not necessarily be the audience that rushes out to see films the first weekend.
Yeah.
So,
and I think also you have to look at the template to Mad Max Fury Road. You got to look at another movie that came years after the original that pretty much had a cult following, where you look at the original trilogy that wasn't a huge success. Then Fury Road hits, and then that's just a massive success critically and box office wise. So I'm thinking maybe the studio was thinking possibly they can maybe use the template of Fury Road with Blade Runner. But I think with the movie being so long and so dense and the pacing of it,
it's a different.
It's a different
product. I mean, it's Mad Max Fury Road appeals from an action entertainment point of view, and Blade Runner really does not. 2049 feels to me like Godfather Part 2, right? Where Godfather 1, miracle, masterpiece movie, why on earth would you ever put a sequel on it? And a few years later they did, and you're like, oh my God, also a masterpiece. Yeah. The shock of 2049 is that it feels like a proper extension of the original. Original's great, and this is its own thing. And I really am surprised how much I loved the movie, how much, of my anxiety was put to bed, and how this film, is like Denis Villeneuve was interested in answering a few questions from the original film and leaving a bunch more open. It's still in the spirit of that final cut ending. I think there's still a lot to debate at the climax of this movie. And while I was watching it, I knew that my second and my third and my fourth watch were going to be the more satisfying watches.
Yeah.
The word bomb is just like the answer to a math question. You can't, like, it's easy to go like, well, it's a bomb that equals like failure, like the movie failed. And that's just plain not true. No.
If I could take box office out of every conversation from here on out in film culture, that would be the best thing to ever happen in my life after marriage.
It's like worth versus worth. You know what I mean? Like the movie is worth this much money, but in terms of it being a piece of art, how much is it worth? That's unquantifiable.
Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunate. I mean, I understand why it's part of the conversation because, they have to
make movies.
They have to make their money back. Of course, it's a business. But yeah, you're right. I think sometimes we get away as far as a conversation about the art of the product.
Lisa and I went and saw this over at the AMC Tyson's Corner Mall Theater because we were hoping to get into the Dolby Prime, but the Dolby Prime was sold out.
We slept on them tickets.
So we had to watch it in the real 3D, which, by the way, the 3D on this, garbage.
Really?
Not totally and utterly pointless. But we watched it, and we're watching 3D, so I don't sit for second row. I sit in row J, right? You want to be in the middle of the theater. And we're in smack dab in the middle of the theater. I've got a guy who answers his phone to my right, and they won't shut up the entire time. I've got on Lisa's left a couple, they won't shut up. I got a couple behind me, they won't shut up.
They are like keeping a whole conversation. There's like no pause.
And then I've got like 6 people in front of me, and they won't stop talking. And the conversation is a lot of like, plot explaining, when you lean over to your friend and you tell them what you just saw on the screen because you needed to for some reason.
To show that your friends that you're paying attention.
That's Deckard. He's from the first film. He's getting out of his car. Wow. Like, shut up. And thankfully, Lisa came to my rescue because she saw my boiling, simmering, silent rage building. And she's just like, let's move. And halfway through the film, we sat in the, one of the worst seats you could possibly sit at in the movie theater. Back row, far right.
Yeah.
But, I mean, it was worth the move because it was like, it's hard to enjoy a movie when you really want to murder somebody.
But what that drove home to me is that Blade Runner 2049, like the original, is not for everybody.
No, it's not. And I had the same situation in my theater where a couple down the row, about a third through the movie, he gets on his phone and starts playing a game. And,
oh my God.
Yeah. And I'm just like, come on. And this is a Thursday night screening.
Yeah, we bitch about Alamo sometimes going like, do they really kick people out? But it is so much better. And weirdly, people eating out of like plastic bags and shit like that is so much louder than somebody eating with a knife and fork. Like there's like, I think that people get nervous and they're holding wrapping and they're just like fiddling and you're just like, ugh.
Stop with the Twizzlers, Sharon.
So yeah, that being said, like, it's just like, you know what? Sometimes just go to the fucking Alamo,
Yeah.
At least if we were in Dolby Prime, all of that would be drowned out by the
Dear
50
Lord.
bajillion.
Well, and the thing about Dolby Prime is, you're sitting in like box office seats. You can't see who's below you. You can't see who's above you. You're in like this tiny little love seat of darkness. Oh, it's the best.
The movie score that you were talking about earlier, Lisa, the movie score and the definitely benefits in the.
I bet you there's some brown notes in that score.
Oh my god!
Jiggle your inside. Some of those.
I mean, the score, just the gunshots. There aren't a bunch in the film, but when Deckard shoots his guns, the pistol sounds like a shotgun. Your ass feels it, and then the screen, the Dolby Prime screen, just the higher contrast, the dark blacks, and just the colors pop more. So Deacon's his cinematography definitely is presented at the highest quality. So I would highly recommend, if you're going to watch it for the first time or do a rewatch, definitely check it out in that auditorium.
The score is done by Hans Zimmer and Benjamin Wallfisch, who just did Dunkirk together. But again, like everything else in the movie, it is really extending out from what Tangerine Dream did in the original film. And if anything ties these two films together, it's the score.
Yeah.
All right. So thumbs up from Blade Runner 2049?
Yeah. And I guess to end my weekend dork, I'm just going to talk about a couple of trailers that dropped this over the weekend real quick. First is one that I saw with Blade Runner was Pacific Rim Uprising.
Yay! Look at my T-shirt. I'm wearing a Pacific Rim T-shirt.
Oh, join the Jaeger Uprising. Oh, okay, that's for the new film too. Okay, that trailer was awesome.
T-shirt.
It was shocking though because, of course, as you guys know, I do the reactions on our YouTube channel.
It's hard to do a reaction from your seat in the theater.
I know. So New York Comic Con was this past weekend, and they said, okay, we're going to drop the Pacific Rim Uprising trailer on Friday. So I'm sitting in the theater, and the trailers are going through, and I see this trailer, and I see these explosions, and this little girl. I'm like, what the hell is this? And I see John Boyega. I'm like, oh shit! I was like, oh man! I was like, oh.
Did your heart skip a beat? Because he's so
dreamy. A little bit, yeah. And I was like, damn it! And I was like, oh, should I close my eyes? I was like, no, I'm gonna watch it. And the screen is so massive. And it was just glorious to see that on the big screen. And I said, you know what? I'm still doing the reaction to it. So I did. So that's up on the channel. But that's just an awesome trailer. It was such a surprise. And it feels so different from...
It doesn't feel like Del Toro.
It doesn't feel like Del Toro at all. I mean, Del Toro's film is kind of draped in this dreary nighttime rain. And this is more...
You mean Del Toro? It's draped in Del Toro?
Yes. There you go, draped in Del Toro. And this one is just more colorful. A lot of the fights and stuff we see is in the daytime. I compared it to like a live action anime, almost like Evangelion a little bit. And that's what it reminded me of. It does kind of have this very animated, cartoony. Not saying cartoony in the vibe of it, but just the look and the aesthetic of it. But I like how they're connecting it to the first film, but it feels something completely different. And Boyega looks great in the film. It looks really good, and that was awesome.
And he's using his regular accent, which is always nice.
Yeah, I like that. Just how like Charlie Hunnam did in
not in Pacific Rim,
not in Pacific Rim, but in King Arthur. I think when they use their natural accent, it really comes off a lot better. Not saying that Boyega's American accent is bad, but I like hearing his.
But there's just something about a dude with an accent. Am I right?
G'day.
Australian?
Shrimp on the barbie. No, that's my Irish accent.
Okay. But I'm excited for Pacific Rim Uprising. And then today, of course, Justice League just dropped. My fellow dorks watched it here in the Dork Cave before we got on air. I did watch it this morning. That reaction is also up on YouTube. This was an amazing trailer. I thought it was the best one yet. I do. I like the beginning of it when we get the dream sequence with Lois Lane. I think that really does establish the heart of the film because even though we don't get Superman in this movie, I think a lot of the stuff that...
I mean in the trailer.
Oh, in the trailer. Sorry.
We're getting Superman in this movie.
We're getting Superman in the movie. But I like that this trailer focuses on the influence that Superman has on not just the world, but these heroes. And that's conveyed through the song. I think that's also show because you have one shot at the end of BVS where you have his monument. You know, it's like if you want to see his monument, look at the people around you. And then when you see that shot in the trailer, you see Wonder Woman, you see Cyborg, you see Flash. This is really, and then you hear Batman's his voiceover where he talks about, he wants to do this for Superman. It's like he wants to do something, something greater. And then just having all these people really come together, and it feels like that stems from who Superman was. So even though we don't see him, he reverberates through this entire trailer and the movie. I hope so. And I just thought it was great. It really just has a lot of heart to it that we really haven't seen, I think, in a lot of the other trailers.
The contacts that Jason Momoa is wearing in the film, were those apparent in the previous trailers?
I think so.
Oh man, they really stand out here. I had not noticed his eyes before.
Yeah, and Momoa's just awesome, man.
My man. I did it better. My man. It's like Jason Momoa's here.
The use of classic rock covers
Lisa loves
trend in these Justice League trailers drives me crazy. It drives me crazy. It sounds cheap to me. If you're going to pay for the song Heroes, pay for the David Bowie version.
I've heard that one.
It's like, to me, I don't know. I find it so, like, I don't know. I find it really pandery and shitty.
Come together, Lisa.
Come together.
I will not.
So those two, and then tomorrow, when this drops tonight, because I think this is dropping Monday, right?
Sure.
Okay. We have Star Wars Last Jedi trailer dropping,
and tickets go on sale Monday.
Yes. So trailer dropping Monday Night Football. Can't wait for that.
Don't bring up sports on this podcast.
Wow.
This is a nerd podcast.
Gotta rewind that. Take it back. No, but that's pretty much my weekend dork.
All right, Lisa, how was your weekend dork?
My weekend dork was awesome. We got back from last weekend.
Yes.
And with the combination of Lost Weekend and Fantastic Fest, I saw 47 movies. I'm so proud of myself and drained. But so I had to recover, and what do you recover with? But binging on Netflix, and I watched all of The Good Place, and I'm pretty sure that's my new religion. Kristen Bell is my spirit animal. I am 100% positive. Like to me, I was like, I wish I was Kristen Stewart, but deep down inside, just Kristen Bell. That's all I am. Do you know The Good Place? You would love The Good Place.
Is it a new series?
I think they're on second season on Netflix. Perhaps, maybe it's canceled. I have not done my research.
No, second season.
Second season. Okay, good. And it's about Kristen Bell, and she dies, and she wakes up in this office, and she's introduced, and they go like, and it's Ted Danson, and Ted Danson is there, and he goes, "You're dead?" And she's like, "Well, did I go to? Am I in heaven or am I in hell?" And he's like, "Well, we don't." That really isn't true. There isn't really a heaven and hell, but there's a good place and there's a bad place. And you're in the good place. And she's just like, hooray! But then it as she's like getting introduced to the good place, it's made very clear that there's been some kind of mistake and she should have actually been in the bad place. And so the series starts out with her trying to kind of fit in she's trying to fit into heaven so she can pass as a good person. And I think it's just really funny. I really find it really charming.
Well, if you love this show, Lisa, you know what that means, right?
What does that mean?
That shit is about to get canceled.
I know. It's so twee that it can only appeal to me. But I love it. But that's not what I'm going to talk about.
Oh.
What I'm going to talk about is last night, Brad and I, or whatever night, let's not timestamp this shit. There was this time, once upon a time, Brad and I went to the 930 Club, and we saw Cameron Esposito and Rhea Butcher on their back-to-back tour. So you guys have heard me talk endlessly about these two wonderful, hilarious, beautiful women. When Brad and I went to Comic-Con 2 years ago. Afterwards, we went to LA, and one of the things I really wanted to go to in LA was a live taping of the Put Your Hands Together podcast, which is the podcast they have together. And through that, I've fallen in love with their comedy. They both have amazing albums out right now. Rhea Butcher's album entitled Butcher came out last year, end of last year perhaps. Very funny. An amazing first album. Just amazing first album. And Cameron Esposito's two latest albums, Same Sex Symbol and Marriage Material, are like perfect. They're like two perfect albums. So I'm totally in love with these women, and I was so excited to get to go and see them. So Brad and I drove into DC for the 9:30 Club. This is actually the second or third comedy show I've seen at the 9:30 Club, which, like, to me, I associate 9:30 Club with, like, when I was, like, in college, I would see Placebo or The Darkness or
Blink-182.
I never saw Blink-182 live. That's my snap of disappointment. But, like, so I associate it with this time. And back then, there was, like, smoking was allowed. And it was, like, really dingy and gross. And you always left going, I guess I'm going to have to burn this jacket. But it's changed very much. And it's completely different when it's a comedy show because they put out seats. But so we show up. Doors opened at 6, and Brad and I did not get there soon enough. We got there at like 6:40, maybe. Mm-hmm. And of course, these two women have a very fervent following, and so everybody got there before us. All beautiful, mostly lesbians, which is beautiful to see. Like, you know, so a bunch of, like, it's just like a little glimpse into, you know, this counterculture that you know I'm not part of, but I super appreciate, and like I just love to just go and watch and enjoy some comedy together. Awesome. So they were all there, and they're all dressed the same, and it was beautiful. And then when the show started, it started with the way they start the podcast, where they are on the stage together, and so. When they start it, so they always start the podcast with them doing a little banter back and forth, whether it's like talking about what happened to their day or whatever is on their mind. And on the podcast, it's very improvised, and they're always, you know, on top of each other and interrupting each other and bickering, and it's very cute.
It actually felt like listening to the podcast because I could not see.
Oh yeah, I forgot. I got so distracted by all the beautiful lesbians. I forgot to tell you that we could not like where we were sitting. Like it was worse than our seats for Blade Runner 2049. Like it was like back corner. Like
I might as well have been in the bathroom.
Oh,
that's not true. Like Brad, like if we stood up, we could see. But
and because we were in the back corner, I watched the entire program standing up because there's nobody behind me.
Yeah, I actually made Brad sit in the row behind me because I wanted to be able to see sitting down, so I could see, but Brad could not. But it was fine. And so the show started, and they actually did some material from the original, from that I had heard them do spontaneously on the podcast. And they were bickering about, you know, Cameron is afraid of praying mantises, and there was that time that the praying mantis was on the door, and like I started to like kind of like see, like get a little like concerned, like am I gonna have heard all of this material? Not that I'm opposed to that in a comedy show, and I've definitely, like, if I saw Leonard Skinner, I would want to hear Freebird. Like, I'm totally fine hearing stuff that I already know and I already love, but that just wasn't the laugh I was anticipating. Yeah. You know what I mean? So, like, to hear them do material I already had heard, I was a little concerned, but still super funny, super cute, seeing them IRL, and it was wonderful. But then when, so after they did their little introduction together, they introduced each other, and then Rhea went up first, and then Cameron went up second. And it was a mix of material I had heard and stuff that was totally new to me, which I think is absolutely wonderful. So Rhea, she is a huge baseball fan, so she opened up with a lot of baseball material, which fell on this crowd a little bit, like, you know, because everybody, like, if you're a fan of Rhea Butcher, you know she loves baseball, but at the same time, it kind of on this crowd, everybody's like kind of like, not a lot of baseball watchers, I feel, in this crowd.
Yeah.
From what I could interpret.
It was playoffs and we were all there.
And so clearly, but like she had a really funny joke about like how she was playing baseball. She was playing fantasy baseball with a group of dudes, and she won fantasy baseball. And it's because she's a woman, and every time a woman plays baseball, it's fantasy baseball because, of course, they are not allowed in the major leagues, which I thought was a really funny, great bit. And then she also and she called softball a tool of the patriarchy, which is hilarious. And then she quickly backpedaled and said, though she totally respects the game and people have amazing skills and blah, blah, blah. It was just so funny. I just love that. And then she did this really, I thought, beautiful and enlightening bit about being surd as a person who is gender fluid, because because when I saw her at Put Your Hands Together, she also did a bit about being surd and really taking offense to it, because she presents as very androgynous. She has a short haircut. She wears button-up shirts and jackets that kind of obscure like a female body shape. But at the same time, she identifies as a woman, and when you're a woman being called a man, you're like programmed to be offended. And so I remembered the bit she had done, and that was only 2 years ago. And then she did this bit about being surd by a Lyft driver and just kind of accepting it and celebrating it and going like, well, he's not doing it to offend me, so just let's roll with it, And the fact that like people are programmed people assume that calling somebody sir or miss or ma'am is the polite thing to do, and they don't do it with the intention of going out and trying to put people in boxes and hurting people's feelings. And that's something even as a cisgendered woman is very sensitive, because I had to go through going from being missed to being ma'amed, which like when you're a woman, not only people are gendering you on site, which is gender is a spectrum, so it's impossible to gender people on site. And I'm being aged on site. And they go, well, you are clearly of marrying age and you are now a ma'am. So that's something that every woman goes through, and it's traumatic. And then, for her, people are calling her sir, and she has to go, I'm a woman, which puts everybody on the defensive. So she did this really beautiful bit about it's hard when there's only 2 boxes and nobody's in the fucking boxes. Everybody's all around the boxes. So I just thought that was really like a funny way to address an issue that a lot of people can identify with and some people straight up don't. So I think to other people it might be very enlightening. So I just loved that as a bit. So then Cameron came out, and Cameron has been a comedian a little longer than Rhea. She's more experienced, and to me, like I can't pick favorites, but if I could pick favorites, it's Cameron. Cameron's totally my favorite. So when she came out, I was super stoked, and she opened with some really beautiful anti-Trump material. So I'm like, yay! And then she did this really beautiful bit about being criticized for being a social justice warrior and saying you can't insult me with 3 words that are great. Those are all things I want to be. I want to be social. I want to be for justice, and I'm a warrior, And so I thought that was really, really a beautiful bit. And she ended on a bit on how contentious it is when lesbians play Scrabble, and I didn't even know that was a thing. So I'm like, hooray! So
don't drop that X.
Yeah, don't play X against an X.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you shouldn't do it, because apparently they compete on verbal acuity.
Oh,
it's very different between in Brad and I's relationship.
I can drop an X whenever.
Triple letter score.
Brad beats me at Scrabble, which I guess I should be offended as a woman. I should feel not woman enough.
Learn more words, lady.
Ooh, I didn't read enough as a child. So if you have an opportunity, Brad, you were at the show. What did you think of the show?
I mean, it was great. I love them.
Yeah.
I love put your hands together, and I thought the format, being a married couple and then doing back to back was something I'd never seen before, and I don't know, it felt unique, it felt special, it felt like you were watching a trend, not a trend, but it felt like you were watching something culturally significant.
Yeah, I think that's true, and the fact that their show Take My Wife has just been canceled because CISO has been canceled. Do you remember CISO? That's no longer going to be a thing, and that was like this beautiful outlet for so many different comedians and artists that I love so much. And the fact that they were in terms of like a show being LGBTQ inclusive, of the 47 roles there were on that show, 22 of them were played by LGBTQ actors and performers, and you're not going to have a platform for that on television.
Here's what I was really thinking while I was watching that show from the bathroom corner of the 930 Club was that I've been going to a really dark place a lot since November because we live in a hellhole and we're all going to blow up at any given moment. And, that's a stressful, anxious place to live. And here I am in a room in which we all have been traumatized by the election. Mm-hmm. And I was thinking, how'd we get the president that we have when we're in this room, when this room can exist in this country? And I thought to myself, well, it's still kind of awesome that this room exists in this country. Maybe not for much longer. But that I got hope from being in the crowd. I got hope from cheering to Cameron Esposito saying, fuck the president, as she walks out on stage.
Right.
I got hope from that.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. No, I think I totally identify with that. And just being in a crowd of like-minded people. And, at least everybody here is this person.
Well,
because when you go, half of the country voted for him. It's not these people.
Not just like-minded people. I've been in plenty of rooms of like-minded people that I don't want to be in. But a room preaching empathy and acceptance.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah, and humanity.
Yeah. So if you want to get a sweet piece of that empathy and humanity, the back-to-back tour is still going on. And I think that the show is just going to get better as they travel, because this is this is the beginning of the tour. And I'm sure things on the bus are going to get more contentious. So there'll be more bits about, two spouses together not pooping on a bus.
Had you ever heard that before?
That you're not, yeah.
You're not supposed to poop on a tour bus?
So if we go on the ItMod nationwide tour, nobody's allowed to poop on the
Why
bus.
is that? Why can't I poop on the tour bus?
I guess there must be limited space.
And you're gonna live in my stench?
I guess.
I mean, we're all in the dork cave right now. You're all living in my stench. I'm pooping on the ItMod tour bus.
I'm
That's all
sitting on the
saying.
bus.
Yeah.
We might have to. I'm the girl. Maybe I'll just be on a trailer behind the bus.
Yeah,
Could that be a thing?
Yeah, you'll be in the outhouse that we're carrying.
And then meanwhile, you guys all get pink eye because you're living on the poop bus.
Yay! High fives.
No thanks. Fist bump, baby. Practice safe bus pooping. Make sure that you listen to their albums, listen to their podcast. Rhea is currently on the TV show Adam Ruins Everything. I don't know if that's a thing.
Is that a network? Show? Like ABC, CBS?
I guess so. I don't have TV.
I don't know if TV's what's happening on TV.
I guess I could have Googled that. But Cameron is a super, she's like a freaking movie star now. She did 4 films in 2016. And
she was in Slight.
She was in Slight. She
right.
played Luna in Slight. And she was also in Mother's Day. None of us saw Mother's Day. And then she was in 2 other movies. And then Cameron is also doing a really beautiful, groundbreaking podcast called Query, spelled Queery. And it's just queer people talking. and they're telling their life stories. A lot of them are performers, but some of them are not. Like she had this really beautiful woman and mother who is a professor, so it's just like people in Cameron's life and people on TV and performers and just talking. And I think that it's just important that everybody has a place for their story and that everybody's story, as much as they want it to be, is available to everyone, because that's how you learn to empathize and learn about other people and so yep, that's it. That's my week in Dork. So watch The Good Place.
The Good Place. All right, Brad, your week in Dork.
After what seems like years, Star Trek Discovery has finally aired on CBS All Access, which I have subscribed to.
Got him.
Is it all episodes or
No, they're nefarious. I should probably wait to subscribe after the entire series has aired and then binge them all at once, but I can't wait. I need to be part of the Star Trek conversation now.
Yeah.
So I will pay the $10 a month, because I don't want those damn commercials, package to see Star Trek every week until it goes on a hiatus at the end of October, only to return. Do I cancel my subscription during that hiatus? I should, but I won't. The bastards know that. But so what? I don't care. That's a small price to pay for being a Trekkie. And I have to say, there certainly seems to be a couple camps, two camps, as far as this show's concerned. There's the camps that like it, and then there's the camps that don't. And the camps that don't seem to be very stuck in their ways, old school Trekkies. How can this take place before the original series when the uniforms look like the J.J. Abrams version, blah, blah, blah? I don't care. Tell me a good Star Trek story. I'll enjoy it. I won't get caught up on timelines and blah, blah, blahs. So that's my point of view. First episode, it's a two-parter, so it's really the first two episodes. The first half of which did air on CBS television, the normal kind, the cable kind. But if you wanted to watch the conclusion of that, you had to have CBS All Access. So the first episode, it starts off on a really cool shot of the cosmos, and the camera's pulling out of the cosmos, and as the camera's pulling out, it pulls out of the eye of a Klingon. And these Klingons appear to be somewhere halfway between what they looked like in the original series and what they looked like in the 80s films. They've got not the full-on ridge head and the hair. They kind of look like the J.J. Abrams Klingons a little bit, but I would say a little bit better. I dig it just fine. I'm accepting this show on its own terms going forward. But what I love about it is I was worried that when Brian Fuller left, and if you remember 2 Comic-Cons ago, when Brian Fuller took the stage to talk about his version of Star Trek Discovery, he was really focusing on the social science fiction.
Hand out donuts.
And handing out donuts. Thank you, Brian Fuller. Now, he gets booted, and I'm like, well, I guess we can forget about the social science fiction angle. That was my fear. Now, these first 2 episodes are based on the screenplays that he wrote for those episodes. How much of his original words and plotting got into this film, I don't know. But I can tell you that from the Klingon point of view, and I'm not going to pronounce these Klingon names properly, so, I'm sorry. I don't have my Klingon dictionary here. But Tekuva, he is trying to bring back the 24 houses of the Klingon Empire to wage war against the oncoming plight of the Federation. The Federation are infesting the cosmos with their so-called benign I come in peace philosophy, but really they're all about absorbing our culture and obliterating any sense of individuality. So we got to strike now. We have to follow the light of Kalis, and he's positioning himself as a messiah figure, and he's positioning we have to make Klingon great again. And from the opening Klingon monologue, I'm going, Trump. This is certainly speaking to our modern woes in this country. and beyond. And I really responded positively towards that. It's like, okay, that's cool. Star Trek still has something to say. I'm on board. Takuvma has brought together a merry band of warriors. They have this new type of Klingon character called the Torchbearer. He wears this badass space armor. He's going to carry the light of Kahless forward into the cosmos to wage war against any threats to the Klingon Empire. And now you have oh gosh, I'm blanking on the ship that our main character starts on. The Shenzhou, something like that. Again, I apologize, but it's Michelle Yeoh's ship. She's the captain of that ship, and Sequoia Martin Green is her first officer. And from the opening scene where they're trying to bring water to this dying planet so the indigenous life can survive, they need to do that without disrupting the Prime Directive. And they do so. And so it's showing the Federation's mission of sustaining life, exploration, furthering our intellectual pursuits from the first scene. And you understand that Michelle Yeoh loves her second in command. She's very much her Riker to her Picard. You need your own ship. You need your own command. This is the life for you. And Martin Green, who's playing Commander Michael Burnham, she is a little bit reluctant, the way that Riker was reluctant about taking command. And you learn through a series of flashbacks that she was raised on Vulcan. Her parents were killed in some sort of battle, some sort of... I get the impression that it was a Klingon raiding party that killed her parents when she was a child. She's actually raised by Sarek, Spock's father. So she's basically the stepsister to Spock. You don't see Spock in this story, but you do meet Sarek. And what I love about her origin is that being raised in the Vulcan Science Academy, being raised on Vulcan, it gives her, it makes logic a pursuit for her character. You know, it's important to her. So she has a little bit of that Spock, we're going to act this way because it's the logical way. Yeah. At the same time, throughout the rest of this episode, whenever she encounters adventure, whenever there's a thrill, there's a scene where she's like doing that Chris Pine Kirk space jump, from ship to ship. Yeah. And when she's rushing through space in her EV suit, as the star is coming over the horizon, and as she's flying through space, this great big beam, this smile happens on her face, and you see the thrill of Captain Kirk. So I feel like Martin Green is really Spock and Kirk in one character.
You can have your cake and eat it too.
And I was just like, yes, this is fun. I like this. Give me more of this. And Martin Green is great in the role. Now, the story kicks off when they encounter, they're not sure what it is. Is it a maroon ship? Is it a satellite? There's some sort of science vessel floating around in space. Let's go investigate it. Well, it turns out it's Klingon in origin, and it's basically like the first lure to bring the Federation over to Klingon side of space, and we're going to start a war with you humans. And now, within the Star Trek timeline, we haven't seen the Klingons for over 100 years since the Scott Bakula show. And so Starfleet is still on the side of like, let's wait this out. Let's see what they want. We're going to negotiate. And, she's been talking to Sarek when, hey, when you Vulcans first encountered the Klingons, how did you guys survive with their culture? And Sarek's like, well, the thing we did is we gave them a Vulcan hello, which was we fired first. We got their respect through first strike. They admire battle. They admire warriors. So we proved that we were warriors before they could dominate us. So that's what she wants to do. Martin Green's like, okay, Captain, we need to fire first. We need to show these guys that we mean business, that we're badasses, that we're not just a bunch of science wimps. And of course, Michelle Yeoh, she's very much the Picard. She's level-headed. She's cool. We're not going to do that. And you have Doug Jones, who's the science officer in this show. He plays Lieutenant Saru, and he is great. I can't remember what his species is, but there's this idea that on his planet, his species were bred to be hunted. So his species had developed this sixth sense for danger. And
like Spidey sense.
Yeah, basically they have a Spidey sense because they're always being threatened. So when, Martin Green has her plan, he's like, look, we can't do that. These weird things on the back of my head are tingling. This is no good. Doug Jones is really phenomenal. I was surprised by their antagonistic relationship between Saru and Michael Burnham. I loved that kind of back and forth where they respect each other, but they don't quite like each other. And Michelle Yeoh's caught in the middle. And of course, things don't go right. Michael Burnham is she's so assured that the first strike option is the only option that they have that she commits mutiny aboard the ship, and she does the Vulcan, death grip nerve pinch on her captain, and she takes over the bridge. And she's just as she's about to fire upon the Klingons.
That's her Kirk side, by the way.
That's her Kirk side because Kirk never followed orders. Kirk always abused Starfleet. And when she takes over the bridge, Michelle Yeoh comes up. She's got her phaser armed. She puts that gun right to Martin Green's head and says, halt. And then things go tits up. Klingons attack. War starts. She's put into the brig. And then, again, a really awesome moment while the ship's breaking apart around her because they are being devastated by this Klingon armada. She has to get out of the brig, which is run by the computer. And she has to convince the computer to let her go. So she Kirks the computers.
Yes!
What Kirk always does is he outthinks the computer so that the computer fritzes and, he's won the day. So Martin Green, through a series of morality questions, gets the computer go, yeah, you're right. If I don't let you go, you're going to die and I can't kill anybody. So, all right, you're free. And that's how she escapes using her brain. Yeah. It's super badass, great Star Trek moment. Michelle Yeoh and Martin Green get back together. They beam aboard the Takuma's ship to kidnap him. And they feel like if they can kidnap him, hold him hostage, it shows that they are superior and we can still have conversation, but it shows that we're badasses. Things don't go right. Michelle Yeoh is killed.
No.
And I was crushed. I was so sad. I was like, damn. No, Michelle Yeoh's captain of the ship. This Asian phenomenal actress. You don't see Asian actors in this role. And before I started the episode, I was watching all the stuff on YouTube, and you were seeing all these young Asian fans at the premiere dressed up in Starfleet, waving their banners. And I was only thinking of them when she got murdered. Whoops. So I'm still kind of frustrated that she had to go.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, this two-parter ends with Starfleet's now at war with the Klingons after 100 years of non-issue with this race. Martin Green has failed at her mission. She's gotten her captain killed, and she's court-martialed. She's stripped of her rank, and she's sent to prison. And that's how the episode ends.
Oh my God!
And then you're like, yeah, where is this going? Because I'm still waiting for it's called Star Trek Discovery. Where the hell is Jason Isaacs? Where is Anthony Rapp? Where is the Discovery? And now we've had 3 episodes. Tonight will be the 4th episode.
I've seen total 8.
They've extended it. I'm not exactly sure what the count is. I think it might even be 16 now.
Oh, really?
Because they want my damn CBS All Access dollars. Okay. And it's going to be like Walking Dead with half seasons and blah, blah, blah. And you sons of bitches. Yeah. So I thought the first 2 episodes were great. Okay. And really surprising. It kept in tone with, a lot of the Star Trek themes and characters. It did not quite look like one of the original series or the Next Gen or Deep Space Nine shows, sure. The first episode shot by Guillermo Navarro, who shot Jackie Brown, who shot From Dusk Till Dawn.
Okay,
and he shot Devil's Backbone, Pan's Labyrinth. So he gives it a look where he's certainly incorporating a lot of what we saw in the Abrams Trek, lens flares, Dutch angles, but he brings in a lot of color that I really, really love. The color that you've seen in those Del Toro films that he shot. And he gives Discovery a look unlike any other previous Star Trek show. That the closest thing it looks like is, the Abrams stuff, but it's even looks a little bit different than that. It's finding its own visual style. I wish Navarro shot the entire series, but he does not. And, I think it shows a lot of promise. The third episode, not as good. Based on a Brian Fuller story, not a Brian Fuller script. We're now on to the Discovery. We meet Jason Isaacs as Captain Lorca. While Michael Burnham is being transported to her prison, there's some sci-fi shenanigans. And their shuttle is rescued by the Discovery, and she's brought on board. And Jason Isaacs as Captain Lorca basically commandeers her to work on the Discovery and to bring her back into Starfleet. And so this is going to be the first Star Trek show where the lead is not the captain. In fact, Jason Isaacs, he's called by other characters on the show a warmonger. At the end of the third episode, you see this room that he has built up where there's all kinds of questionable shenanigans, weaponry, skeletons of Gorns, creatures at bay. He's going to do whatever he has to win the war. So there's going to be some shades of gray at play that we saw in shows like Star Trek Deep Space Nine and Star Trek Voyager. Star Trek is not all gloss and smiley faces. They've dealt in Battlestar Galactica gray in the past, and I think Discovery is really going to amp that up. I think the most exciting thing is Shaniqua, thank you. Shaniqua Martin Green as Michael Burnham. She's phenomenal. Jason Isaacs is doing his Jason Isaacs thing. Anthony Rapp is also playing a bit of an antagonistic character. Lieutenant Saru, who was on the previous ship, now is on the Discovery. Now he's the first officer to Jason Isaacs. He's, not the friendliest guy either. So aboard on the bridge of the Discovery, you have a lot of contention. And that is certainly not an environment that you saw a lot on the previous Star Trek shows, and seems to be rubbing certain Trekkies the wrong way. I'm kind of excited by it all. I like all the personalities. I certainly like all the actors. I like the look of the show. Hopefully, it is weird having two episodes that I loved that were pretty much, I'm guessing, from Brian Fuller. When it goes into the third episode and you see a pretty significant dip in quality, I'm a little concerned how the rest of the show goes, but I have a lot of hope.
So what's the conversation like online? Have you been watching that?
I mean, the conversation online is, there are certainly people who just like F this show, and there are other people who are excited by its potential. A lot of the people who really liked it loved the first two episodes, but like I just expressed, third episode, not as good. It's not garbage. It's another one of those episodes where something has happened on this other ship. Let's go investigate it. There's a monster aboard. And it's just not
right.
It feels like a one and done disappointment, and a series that when Fuller was on it, we were going to get a massive season arc. And there's an arc at play in this third episode. And by the very nature of her being a prisoner at the start of this episode and back on the bridge by the end of the episode, it is propelling her character and her narrative path forward. And I don't know where it's going to end. Is it going to end with her in the captain's chair or in Mutiny Part 2? I don't know. But I'm excited by it all. And it's been, 14 years since the last Star Trek show.
Really?
And it's exciting. It's exciting to see all this stuff going on. And, they're still introducing new things. And there are some things that fans are like, oh, we've never seen that before. How can this happen? There's this bit where there's a mind meld between Michael Burnham and Sarek, but it's a mind meld that occurs over light years.
Oh.
So Sarek has developed an ability, and because our relationship is so strong, I can go your mind to my mind without us being on the same planet, let alone the same room.
Yeah.
And the way that's visualized in like this holodeck kind of scenario where they're, standing in space together, I thought was interesting, and I dug it.
Could he do it without your permission? Like once you've had that connection, can he just get in there and mind meld you just whenevs?
We've seen in Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country that you can definitely mind meld rape somebody.
Oh.
Spock does it to what's her name from Sex and the City?
Yeah.
And Big Trouble in Little China.
Kim Cattrall.
Kim Cattrall. That's a really grotesque scene in that movie. So I imagine, you could do that probably.
Oof, rude.
Yeah.
All right.
And on that note, Star Trek rape. Thanks, Lisa.
Oh man, so post Fantastic Fest and Lost Weekend, I've just been trying to reacclimate by watching more movies. I've gone to
Little Hair of the Dog.
Yeah, I've seen Kingsman, I've seen Ninjago, I took Sia to see the My Little Pony movie.
Did you see Ninjago by yourself? Or with Sia?
No, Sia was with me.
Okay.
But I would have seen it by myself.
The way you structured that, it just sounded like you. Well, you would.
I would.
See it by yourself.
Yeah,
I'm going to see it by myself.
If she couldn't have gone, I would have seen it by myself. But yeah, we saw that. I saw Blade Runner 2049, and I have seen The Mountain Between Us.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know what?
And American Made. You saw American Made.
Damn, I saw American Made too. Holy crap! Which one do I want to talk about? I really liked both Between American Made and The Mountain Between Us. I really like both those films. Probably I enjoyed them about the same amount, like on both 3-star films.
So of the movies you just listed, just rank them right now. So those two are on the bottom.
Kingsman's at the top.
Kingsman's on the bottom.
Oh, that's rough.
Then Blade Runner's at the top. Then Ninjago. Then
My Little Ponies.
Just off of the Pulp Fiction reference alone, yeah. And then American Made, Mountains Between Us, and then way further down, it's a huge space, and then there's Kingsman. I was really disappointed with the Kingsman, so much so I don't even want to talk about it. I'll talk about the Mountains Between Us. So, star power. That's a phrase I hear. I've heard all the time. I hear it a lot. I've heard it all my movie going life. But I don't really think about it too much when I'm watching movies with big stars. Like when I go see a Tom Cruise movie, obviously I know like he's an A-lister. His name, he's attached to movies because they know he will get asses in seats. There's a star power inherent in Tom Cruise. You got Will Smith. And there are certain actors who have star power. But because I guess it's so ingrained in, pop culture, film culture, for me, like I don't even really consider it. I mean, I know I'm going to go see a Tom Cruise movie. I don't sit there and go because he's in it. There's something in the trailer for The Mummy that really looked cool to me, and I want to go see the movie outside of the fact that it's Tom Cruise. So basically the whole star power thing, I'm aware of it, but I just never really dwell on it. So I'm watching The Mountains Between Us today, and Idris Elba, his name, especially in recent years, has been brought up a lot. Most notably when people are talking about the next candidate for the next Bond, or whether it be something like the Dark Tower flop and his casting is rolling, or any other part that Idris Elba or any other film that he's done, whether it be like some indie stuff like his smaller dramas. Whenever he's in something, his name is brought up, and he's always spoken of in a positive light, and rightfully so. And I almost called her Kate Winslet.
Yep.
Yeah.
I really like Kate Winslet. I haven't seen her in. I have to be honest. I haven't seen her in a bunch of stuff, and it's been a while. I think since she's actually been in some stuff.
No, you saw her in 999.
I saw 999.
Yeah, Casey Affleck, Anthony Mackie.
Oh yeah,
Kate Winslet.
I guess I saw 999. Well, so here's the thing. Like, I was watching The Mountains Between Us, and I'm looking at Idris Elba and Kate Winslet. I'm watching their performances, and not even just their performances, but it's their screen presence. And while neither of them, I think, are A-listers, but I do think that they exude star power in that they can take a story with a potentially preposterous premise. That was a 3 P's.
Alliteration,
potentially preposterous
baby.
premise. And elevate it and make it enjoyable for me. There is a lot of convenience in the film and contrivances, but at the end of the day, I went along for it because I just wanted to see them two together. Like, I just wanted them to be together. I like seeing them act opposite of each other. And granted, Idris Elba has been in better films. He's had a better script. He's even done better performances. But I mean, I guess because of his star power, because I like Idris Elba as an actor, I don't want to say I was willing to forgive or say, this is okay, but I genuinely enjoyed the film. So the film is about two people who, through circumstance, end up on a twin engine airplane piloted by Beau Bridges, who, if you close your eyes, sounds like Jeff Bridges, which is always cool. And that plane crashes.
Talk about not seeing an actor in a minute.
Yeah.
Beau Bridges.
Yeah. And basically a cameo. So the plane crashes, and these two strangers, one a brain surgeon and the other a war photographer, are stranded on this mountaintop.
I listen to that and I go, those jobs sound fake. But those two people, they could end up on a plane together. Those are both real jobs.
Right.
But I mean, just could be like, coincidence-wise.
And at least they weren't two jobs that, like, because one's a brain surgeon and because one is a photographer,
they're going to solve crimes.
Those two professions, like, are what got them out. Like, it was fated that they met, and these two professions just happened to be what they need to survive. It wasn't a case of that.
And they landed somewhere where they had dire need for brain surgeons and also pictures.
Right. But although him being a brain surgeon, his medical knowledge did lend itself to first aid. But nothing beyond that. It wasn't like going down the mountain, she hit her head on a rock and her brain split open and he had to,
patch
fix
that
it.
shit up.
Right. So none of that. But, so basically it's a survival, them trying to get out of that circumstance back to safety, back home. Now, she was flying home because she has a wedding the next day that obviously she does not make. And so their relationship is grown and cultivated over the course of, I think they were stranded for took them 3 weeks to get from down to the from the top of the mountain.
Not a true story, though. I should not be amazed.
No, it's not a true story. If it was, this is one of those you had to be there to believe it. But and again, this movie, I had a similar experience rewatching Transformers the last night. So I realized that the audience for this movie is the people who watch
Lifetime movies,
or any other any other romance drama film where the stars align and things fall into place for the people at the end of the film so they can be together.
That sounds lovely. Who doesn't want to see that?
Especially when Idris is involved.
I know.
Right. Oh, and you get to see him shirtless because she falls in the water in the trailer. He has to keep her warm with his body. So there's that, ladies, if you dig that, or fellas. I don't know, but I just really liked Kate. I found out or realized in this movie that I guess I still have a super crush on Kate Winslet all the way from Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Yeah, she's a manic pixie dream lady.
It never went
away.
away.
This is the second time I've knocked over the stack of notebooks.
So my crush on her never went away, and she's aged so perfectly. Oh my goodness, she's beautiful. And I don't know, so maybe I'm biased in that. But so anyway, I'm watching this movie and I go, because it's not been getting good reviews. It's got a low Rotten Tomato score or whatever, and also other sites have been slamming it. But I just felt like this is just not your type of movie. Then it's directed towards people who. Basically, it's an adaptation of a novel, if I'm not mistaken.
Is it a Nicholas Sparks book?
Charles Martin.
It's not
Charles Martin.
Yeah.
So maybe Charles Martin is a romance novelist, and it feels like one of those movies. Like if you just want to suspend disbelief to have this romance tie up in and happily at the end, and this is one of those movies. I'm talking about the end where you're walking away from the person and you're going your separate ways, and both people stop at the same time and think about it and change their minds and run back towards each other at the same time around the corner. Like, it's that.
I love that.
Like,
though.
that's the end. I mean,
I'm for that.
And so, like, if you're cool with that, then you would dig this film.
I like Idris Elba. I like kissing. I like Kate Winslet. This sounds right up my alley.
Yes, and it is VF.
Yay!
She does brush her teeth and spit the toothpaste in the bucket, but that's about it.
That does bother me sometimes. So
But
I'll make sure I'm nice and calm when I go.
So when she's brushing her teeth, just look away for like 30 seconds. So yeah, I brought up Transformers the last night when I was thinking about this, because Transformers the last night. So I posted that I was watching that film, and what's up, Scott? Scott Wood said the worst film in the last decade. So while I'm watching Transformers the last night, granted I've seen this film twice in the theaters. This is the one that I saw.
I cannot believe this movie's coming up again.
In Dolby 3D. Hold on, this is. Let me tell you, this is what I had. This I guess like it's an epiphany, right?
Okay.
Wait
So
for those dorkies.
So I think people are unfair towards
Shitty movies.
these films.
Oh, sorry.
Right? So do you hate on Brian, do you hate on the My Little Pony movie?
I don't care for it. I don't think about it.
Why not?
Because it's not my demographic. It's not for me.
All right, here's the thing. The Transformers films are not your demographic. They're not for you.
Dude,
No, they are my demographic.
We
Hold
had
on.
this conversation
Hold
already.
on. Let me say
They're
this.
geared towards me. The Transformers movies are geared towards me.
Okay, so I think, this is what I think. So the Transformers property, the actual property of Transformers, has had like many iterations. Even the cartoon, like the Gen 1 cartoon, and then there's like 13 or 14 other ones that came out in the States alone, let alone overseas, and the ones that came out in Japan, even before the ones that came out in the States. So it's a property that we grew up with, the 80s, the Generation 1 cartoon. So we grew up with that property, and it was a favorite of ours when we were kids. So then we grew up as an adult, and we grew up two adults, still remembering our love for Transformers, right? So then a live action movie comes out, and we think, okay, they're making a live action movie of one of my favorite properties, and so it has to be great. It has to be as good as Transformers the movie, the cartoon, and it has to look like the things that I remember. But then, like, it's not that, and we say, okay, we get upset, and then it has like humor in it that's really cruel.
Darren.
Hold on, let me finish. Hold on.
I like the first movie though.
All right, you do. And then it has humor in it that's crude, that doesn't really appeal to us. Okay. So the humor in those, and I'm not saying that we can't say that Transformers films are bad, because they are bad films. Yeah. I don't like them.
Yeah.
No. You got to go back to that episode that we recorded on this. I like Age of Extinction. I'm saying compared to Age of Extinction, The Last Night is shit.
All right, but here's the thing.
It's pretty bad.
And I'm not even saying The Last Night is a good movie. I'm not finished. Okay. It has the same problems. I have the same problems with The Last Night as I have with the other films. Well, maybe I apologize. I shouldn't say you all. I should say me.
Okay.
The Transformers films were not made for me. They're made for little kids. So the humor in the Transformers movies, right? The jokes that fall flat. Hold on. The jokes that fall flat was the same type of humor that is in what trailers did I see? Ferdinand.
Darren.
Hold on. I'm going somewhere with it.
Okay.
Firstly, have you watched this Transformers movie with kids?
Sure.
Like all that, the stuff that we don't like, they don't care about.
Well, I don't know. Maybe in the past, but these recent movies, especially this last one, kids.
I'm not begrudging a child's desire or enjoyment of Transformers: The Last Night, but that child.
I mean
that
any movie.
Joke
I'm not just talking about Transformers: The Last Night. I watched that recently, which made me think about the franchise in general. That's the lead into the franchise in general.
Yeah, but I think we need to give kids a little more credit.
No, I mean,
okay, if that's the case, then why do these movies make so much money?
But that's the thing. This movie
did.
Okay, but these movies make so much money because parents are taking kids to see them, right? Or they were.
Yeah, they were. And
either the parents aren't enjoying them as much, but still they're successful compared to other non-Transformers movies. The box office for Transformers: The Last Night was not as high as it's what the diminishing returns type thing. It's not as high as the movie before, Age of Extinction.
Yeah.
But it's still way more than almost every other movie that came out this year.
I think you're obscuring your own point by using Transformers Age of Extinction as your example.
You mean The Last Night?
Whatever. They're all the same to me because not my demographic. But, Darren, your point is, with The Mountain Between Us, that, like, to me, this is what how I interpret that you're saying. Like, people who read, what's the name of the author?
Charles Martin.
Charles Martin books, or Nora Roberts books, or any of those books that are about relationships coming together, romance books, are not going, like, it's not fair to judge those books against great literature. Those books, a person can really legitimately love those books, and even though they're not great literature, you're saying, and those books are perfect to people who love those books. The Mountain Between Us is a romance movie, and so you have to judge it on its merits as a romance movie. Therefore, it can be a great book. So whatever Transformers movie you're fucking talking about, you have to judge it on the merits of, this is a Transformers movie. And so in terms of being a Transformers movie, it is good or bad. But Brian and Brad are making the point that even on those terms, whichever the last Transformers movie is still a bad fucking movie, which you disagree with.
No, I all of the Transformers movies, I don't like them. They're not movies that I would. Okay. I've said that before.
But weirdly, keep coming up.
I found it. Well, because of the.
But you're saying you're saying who they're targeted towards.
Kids really like the Transformers movies. Is what I'm saying.
Sure. I don't think that the humor in it is.
I'll give him that. I don't know who's doing. I don't know why they would write "Sting Like a Bee" to a child who's never heard of Muhammad Ali, but I do agree that children and lots of people, not just children, love the Transformers films, and that not every film is made for the same audience. Not every film is made for Brad Gullickson.
But and I don't even think, the whole Muhammad Ali thing. I understand that, but what I'm saying is, I don't even think the Transformers movies are made for fans, for older people who grew up on the cartoons.
I'll give you that.
I think they're made to introduce new people who didn't grow up on those cartoons to the idea of robots that can transform into cars and look like cars and stuff like that.
But I still think to a degree you do have to target it to the people who grew up with the material as well. I mean, if not, why have Optimus Prime? Why bring Peter Cullen back, to voice Optimus Prime if you're not trying to reach back with nostalgia for the people who watched it back in the 80s? So to a degree, they are targeting us.
Right.
Now, I think a lot of that is also due to Michael Bay. I mean, if the studio decided to take a different direction with the film, then I think, it may be more targeted. You can still target your nostalgic demographic like us, and it also catered to kids as well. Look, Marvel is doing that. Marvel's doing that great, but
Michael Bay's interest was not targeting us. Like the studio may have been that, but Michael Bay's interest was making a movie about a car that can turn into a robot, because he didn't even know anything about the Transformers.
That's what I'm saying. So that goes to the studio for letting him just basically take over this franchise and let him do whatever he wants with it. But it's still, I think initially when they greenlit the first film in 2007, this was like, okay, let's make a live action Transformers movie that's going to call back to the original Gen 1 cartoon, that's going to bring the fans like us in. And that's what the first film I thought did. I was super excited to see that first movie. When you see the first shot and you hear Peter Cullen's voice, that gives you goosebumps because we grew up with that. So it is targeting us.
But then even with that film, but definitely from the second, third, fourth, and fifth one on, because it was Michael Bay, like his intention wasn't to get older fans. It was to sell new toys, just like the cartoon. The first cartoon was just a commercial to sell toys.
I agree.
So the second, third, fourth, and fifth, however many films there are now, I think we're made for new audiences and for kids.
Well, the Transformers films, whatever the impetus was to take that brand, were tremendously successful. Everybody showed up for Transformers 1 through 4. Everybody. And for whatever reason, less people showed up to the last night.
And I think that's because of how.
I don't know. I think either we hit a saturation point.
Well, I think you have to look at the last
quality
films.
point. Yeah, I mean,
yeah,
I don't know.
You have to look at the last films. I mean, granted, Age of Extinction was successful, but because of how bad critically that movie was, when the new film comes around, people aren't going to be as you're not building excitement because you're just going
But did
off.
that happen for Age of Extinction regarding the one before?
Well, a lot of people liked the original trilogy with Shia LaBeouf, and a lot of people thought that the fourth film was going to be a turning point because they were going in a new direction with Mark Wahlberg, bringing Dinobots. You have all these things that excited people that they never saw before, but when that film shit the bed, even though it made a lot of money, when you bring the fifth film around, they're like, all right, I went through this before. I'm not going through this again. Hence why this movie didn't make as much money because people were just fed up and tired with it. There's no reason to go see this movie.
But again, even with the last film making all that money, you got to. It didn't do that. It didn't make the huge box office that it made. Like it didn't do that like just on opening weekend. I mean, that film like made money over the course of a period of time. So
you have to look at internationally as well. That why and
international sales on last night.
And these
were also
films
down.
appeal more to that. And I mean, we can get into a conversation about international box office as well and how these movies appeal more to an international audience because sometimes you kind of have to. I don't want to say, for lack of a better term, dumb down the material so that it can have a broader appeal to many different regions of the world. Because you're not going to you can't tell a complex film, say something like a Blade Runner 2049, and maybe it may be interpreted different if you release that in Europe or Asia or wherever the case may be. So sometimes they kind of have this.
At the end of the day, Transformers: The Last Night made $605 million worldwide. It cost $217 million. It made money. Tons of people saw The Last Night.
That's what I'm saying.
But is it as many as the previous film?
No.
But I don't even know. Why are we talking about this?
Because it relates to the mountain between us.
Yeah.
Oh, it does?
Yeah. So the plane that they crashed in, that's a Transformer called Spitfire.
Interesting.
Not in the film, but that's the... I'm just kidding. I was just trying to tie it all together.
But you're...
But you were talking about the Blu-ray. You were watching...
Well, yeah, and I was watching, and I was thinking, watching the new 4K disc, which is freaking amazing. It just made me think that with the amount of money that these movies make, someone's loving these films, like, because it didn't make that much just on opening weekend. Like, so someone went to see that movie like 2 weeks after it came out, 3 weeks after it came out.
It's not people here in the States.
No,
that's
still a lot of people
is
saw
bigger
it.
than the States, Brian.
$127 million within the domestic box office. That's still a lot of money.
Blade
the only
Runner's
reason
not
we
even
talk
gonna-
about it being a bomb is it cost $217 million. So that's a Hollywood budget thing.
Yeah, it has nothing to do with the amount of people that saw. I'm just saying, like, I just had the thought in my mind with all the criticisms that I have with it, that I share with you all, even outside of all that, there are a huge amount of people who don't give a shit about that.
But this is what goes back to, to bring it full circle, our Blade Runner 2049 thing. Like, you go like, well, what's it worth on the box office? What is it worth as a piece of art? And I think that it could be argued that even though it did eventually make its money back, I don't feel that whatever the fifth Transformers movie was called, The Last Night is not worth the same amount as Blade Runner 2049, in my opinion.
Oh, I agree.
No, definitely not.
I agree.
But that doesn't mean that people are not allowed to like it.
Like Darren watching his 4K version.
I'm just saying it's just a curious thing to me, like just to see, like just like how we talk about something. It's a curious thing, like how Avatar is the highest grossing movie of all time. How people were so in love with that. Again, this is just another phenomenon that I just took notice of. It crossed my mind while watching it.
I mean, it's always interesting to see what people respond to.
But what I don't understand is your action point. Like, now we go like, okay, The Last Night made so much money.
Obviously
People
has a
love
fan
it.
base.
People love it. How does that change our conversation about it? People who look at it and go, this movie is not great. Can we, like, how does that change our conversation?
Well, I don't like whenever. So I don't know, like every time I mention, like if I mention watching the Transformers movie, like people always, it's either what the fuck is wrong with you or whatever. Like
worst
like,
film of the decade.
Yeah, worst film of the decade. Like okay, to you, baby, but some people love this movie. So
why have a podcast if we can't like go like like watch a movie and then criticize it?
I've criticized the Transformers movies. What? How do we?
No, what Darren is saying is whenever he watches The Last Night, or he brings it up in conversation,
or any Transformers
movies, he is attacked online based on the people that he has populated his Facebook and Twitter feeds with, of going like, "Why would you watch that crap?"
But there's so many people that watch,
right? Because you need to start friending the people who like these things too.
Well, it's not even, but the thing is, like, I don't know. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna drop it.
It's interesting.
We've broken Darren.
It's not. You know, it's not even worth talking about. I'm just gonna drop it.
No, I mean, you agree with all of us that the movies are.
But no
shit.
one seems to fucking hear that.
No,
but what I'm saying is, and it's all I'm saying by me agreeing with your criticisms on Transformers, yet me still watching it, I'm saying it's all right to have criticism with the movie.
No, I agree. I own the first 4 on Blu-ray, and I watch them periodically. I mean, they're movies that I fall asleep to all the time. So,
but the spiral of this conversation blows my mind because I, for the life of me, do not understand what the point is.
Oh, well, I just like talking about movies.
Well, I mean, I'll tell you this. Whatever the case is with these movies, I'm looking forward to the Bumblebee movie.
Oh.
I am, because first, Michael Bay's not involved. Travis Knight is involved. He's directing it.
Who?
Travis Knight from Leica Studios, Cubo and the Shoestrings. And so I'm feeling the movie might have a little more emotion, a little more story, a little more character to it. We're getting set in the 80s. We're getting the original Volkswagen Bumblebee. And I don't know. It seems like it gets me excited. You know, John Cena's in it.
So when he tweets that he's excited about the Bumblebee movie, just don't don't respond with that movie looks like garbage to me, because Darren is going to be like,
no. What the conversation is, narratives are created around films.
Absolutely.
And the narrative that has been created around Transformers within film Twitter and the people that we communicate with online
is that
Transformers films are garbage. Why do we keep going back to it? And when you encounter outrage culture like that it is frustrating, because you want to say, well, then how do these movies make so much money if you're so adamant that they're garbage?
Yeah.
Can't you at least adhere to the fact that some people might respond positively towards these movies? And why do you have to shit on my parade if I'm watching this film?
But he's not even on that parade.
But I see
that's what he's saying.
Yeah, but you're being open to the people who do like these movies, and enjoy these films. I mean, and you're right, Brad. The whole, like you say, there is a culture, a narrative culture that's always been that's around, and we see it now with the DCEU and Justice League. So I mean, everybody shits on that, and regardless if Justice League looks like a good movie, this trailer just came out. People are going to shit on the movie regardless. It doesn't matter.
The challenge for The Last Night at this table is we all hate it.
Absolutely. And for me personally, I'm always open to the next installment. Like I said, I don't like these last couple films, but because of how Bumblebee is shaping up, it's getting me excited to see that movie and the possibility, because it's the first film that Michael Bay's not directing.
So is Darren going to see is Darren anticipating the Bumblebee film?
I'm not anticipating.
Well, he's going to see it though, because he watches movies.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and if the trailer looks good or whatever, and if it looks like it's a different tone than what Michael Bay's been doing.
But I'm not going to say, oh man, Bumblebee movie is going to be shit.
If Transformers the penultimate night came out, I'd be there Thursday.
Yeah.
Because I watch movies. I root for Michael Bay.
Absolutely.
Pain and Gain, great. 13 hours, a lot of good stuff in it.
Yeah. Hey, look, I've been on this podcast and said millions of times that I was done with Transformers. I was out, even after the trailers. Where was I Thursday night? I went to go see Transformers the last night. So everybody, us in the film community, are going to see these movies regardless. We're going to see them. It's just our response to it and our different takes on it. But other
And we'll
than
still
that,
have people mocking us for it.
yeah, absolutely, and that's fine.
And that is fine.
Yeah. Because movies are subjective.
I just
somebody
don't
thinks somebody in this world, The Last Night is their favorite movie of all time.
It is,
and that is okay.
Their second favorite, Norbert.
And Michael Bay has permission or whomever to put out all of the Transformers movies that they want to, and everybody should be nice on Twitter. Those are all things that I agree with.
Yeah.
I just don't understand why it's coming up.
I apologize for bringing it up. I was watching Transformers
I enjoyed talking about it.
And I thought about that, and when I was watching The Mountains Between Us, I was thinking, there's just like people were shitting on Transformers, people have been shitting on this movie. But just like there are people who like Transformers, there are going to be people like myself who like this movie. That's where the common thread was. I apologize for going on a tangent. So I'm sorry.
Fine.
And that's going to do it for my weekend. Brian, what do you got coming up this week?
Oh goodness, this week. A couple films come out this weekend. Marshall, I think I'm gonna check that out with Chadwick Boseman, the Thurgood Marshall movie, and the Foreigner with Jackie Chan. Jackie Chan doing his.
Are you going to see Battle of the Sexes?
I would like to see that if I can find it somewhere around me.
It's all around.
It is. Mm-hmm. Is it wide? Okay, I'll look for that as well. And Netflix, I want to check out Gerald's Game.
Yeah.
That's out. That's out now. So I'm gonna try to check that this week. I know you've had some good things to say about it from Fantastic Fest. So yeah, I'm gonna try to catch up on some stuff.
All right, Lisa, what are you looking forward to this week? This week.
I don't know. I never know what's coming out.
I know what you're excited about.
What?
Happy Death Day.
Oh,
what?
That comes out
13th, right?
Oh,
I'm open to it.
13th. Okay.
I'm looking forward to it.
It does look fun.
All right. What about you? Oh, Brad, did you just say what you?
I'm looking forward to all the things you just said. Without a doubt. I also just did, for Film School Rejects, an interview with Frank Grillo, star of Wheelman, and an interview with Jeremy Rush, the director of Wheelman. Those interviews will be coming out this week, and that film comes out on Netflix October 20th.
Oh, yeah, I'm ready.
And I also did an interview with the director of the Dementia 13 remake, Richard LeMay. That interview should be coming out today. Hopefully it's already out. So,
all right. I don't know what I'm looking forward to.
Happy Death Day.
I guess I'm going to go see that. I enjoyed that trailer. So I want to see what the cause of her coming back over and over again. So I'm curious. And we got a fistful of Ghosts at the end of the week, so check that out. Also, next week, I guess, is Idmont Film Club.
Yeah.
Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels.
You have 7 days to get those tweets in.
And we've gotten a few, but we need more always.
So hashtag Idmont Film Club. And send us your questions, comments, thoughts on Guy Ritchie's debut, smashing debut, Lock, Stock, and Two Smoking Barrels. And also be on the lookout in the middle of the week for our Fantastic Fest cast, where we will try to recap the insanity that was the Fantastic Fest 2017 in Austin, Texas.
Yes.
You can follow the podcast at IdModcast on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Brian is at The Turtle Dork on Twitter, The Turtle Dork 1 on Instagram, Brian William Young on Facebook. My wife Dork is at Sidewalk Siren on Twitter, and Instagram, and Letterboxd. Brad Gullickson is at Mouth Dork on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, Letterboxd, and Untapped. And I'm Darren Smith, the Disco Dork, on all social medias. It's easier that way. That's going to do it for us. Thank you all for listening. Enjoy the rest of your week. And until next time.